Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Tom Slivick, and I'm with Angelo Codevilla. And Angelo, we were talking a little bit during the break. I had mentioned like Mark Levin. That's how we started off the show. Mark Levin's reading a little bit of his essay in Forbes magazine, and I was saying Mark Levin has a way of saying like the government and the Democratic Party are one and the same thing, in a way that the Democratic Party feeds the government and the government feeds the Democratic Party.
That's correct.
Then I was saying, adding to it, and like then we take the media with that as an appendage of the government, which it seems to be now, and then the schools, which are a part of government, and then you wanted to add along with that. Let's put the corporations in.
The large corporations. The large corporations are large, often because of government regulations. Regulations, subsidies, contracts, and by doing that, they can make you do things that are in their interest. They drive smaller corporations, smaller business out of business.
Okay. I wanted to make maybe a distinction, see which one we're talking about, corporations and, say, crony capitalism.
Large corporations and crony capitalism are one and the same thing. Back in the 1920s, an eminent economist by the name of Joseph Schumpeter wrote a very, very good book on the subject, showing how socialism really is the natural result of the growth of capitalism, because large corporations very quickly try to, insofar as they gain power, insofar as they gain access to government, they try to gain special privileges for themselves.
Influence regulation.
They influence regulation. As a matter of fact, look, the rules for Obamacare are being written largely by these corporations. The rules for the Dodd-Frank bill, which is making it very difficult for people to get mortgages, are being written by the banks themselves. I mean, this is crony capitalism. This makes for corporations that are too big to fail, that are cosseted by the government, and which feed the government.
Okay, and in a way to get this, just following this and taking it a little bit back to how we started, we've got bills that are normally or used to be done in a conference and then in another spot, and people would add on, and we'd hear about it, and we'd know about it,
and they would be short enough to be read and implemented as laws. Now, these most legislative acts are, in fact, grants of power to bureaucracies, which then team up with their associated private institutions. These private institutions are really no longer private because they use the power of government. All of this complex, this governmental, institutional, and semi-private complex becomes a ruling class. And those of us who are simply independent, who are not part of that, are the outs.
I want to say when I was a youngster or whatever, and even a little bit of an oldster, we call all that stuff red tape. Hey, cut the red tape, get through all this government stuff, and get something done. How do we, even in the service, I mean, if you, how do I get past all this regulation or that? And let's go see the old man. You know what I mean? Now,
sure.
How do we get out of this
well,
maze
you
of
don't look. We have
tape?
gotten into a very, very sticky system, and you don't get out of it simply by cutting red tape. You get out of it by getting out of the system, by making government smaller.
Okay.
There's only one way to do it, and that is to make government smaller.
All right. When government gets larger, the saying goes, then freedom gets smaller.
The red tape.
Liberty is smaller.
The red tape is a necessary part of big government. You can't have big government big government is the red tape, and furthermore, it is the influence. And note this carefully. Big government is the influence of the favorite private parties. Government becomes a complex of interest groups. Favored people that are part of the government against non-favored people who are the outs. Okay. I mean, big government really does divide society into antagonistic groups. If we want to be a whole society again, we have to
Okay.
get rid of the special privileges that government is all about. Government is nothing but a machine for special privilege.
Okay. I believe you were saying at the end of our last segment we need to get educated. We need to learn to read more, probably go to,
That's right.
books, internet, everything
No,
we
the
can.
internet,
What
the
do we
internet
need
will
to-
give you facts, but it will shorten your attention span.
Okay. All right.
Read books, damn it. That's
Okay.
that. Our founding generation was very well educated. Look, Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas debated on the highest level in front of a bunch of farmers who understood what they were saying and the debates were recorded by a stenographer. The stenographer recorded the crowd saying, "Stick to the point, Lincoln." No, Douglas, not so. Now, can you imagine
I'd like to.
our people, our audiences listening to debates, challenging the logic of the debaters? By golly, that would take an education, an educated electorate. And right now, our schools are producing people who are less and less educated.
As you said, I think with the schooling you were describing, it's more the classical style where we
right.
stick to the classics, read classic books. As you say, you learn reasoning power, and
You learn
it's
math.
hard to get hoodwinked. I think I made a comment out here. It's just hard to believe that the American people are so hoodwinked.
You learn mathematics, you learn basic science, and if you learn basic science,
there's your logic there.
You learn logic, and an awful lot of this baloney, such as global warming, is implausible. I mean, the people who support global warming say, well, this is science. Ask them basic scientific questions. They're ignorant. They don't know. No, they say, well, the scientists say, but what do you say? How do you know? Then they're stuck for an answer. You see, our basic political problems arise from our basic educational problems. Ignorance, lack of respect for logic. Let me refer you, or the audience,
Sure.
to the Pope Benedict XVI's discourse at Regensburg University. That discourse was said by the media to have been a tirade against Islam. Not so. He mentioned Islam only in one paragraph, talking about Islam's rejection of reason. Islam went through a period about 1,000 years ago in which they thought about the relationship between God and reason and decided, no, that God is not reason and that human beings should not reason. Well, what the Pope said is, look, and this was the bulk of the speech, we in the West are now going through a similar kind of period in which reason is being devalued. And he essentially begged American elites to get back to learning and practicing reason.
Okay. That sounds reasonable to me, and it's hard to see how we could get back the school system to that type of education. It would seem to me like the homeschooling effort has more to do with that,
It
to help
does.
do that, and maybe a voucher program.
A voucher
would certainly help.
program would certainly help. Now, not all parents would make good use of it, but a substantial percentage would. There have always been uneducated people because they don't want to be educated, and they never will be educated because they don't want it. However, there's always been a portion of the population that has valued education, and these have, in fact, made us the greatest country in the world. Americans are not immune to idiocy any more than any other people, but we've always been free to educate ourselves. Government education, the government monopoly of education that we have today, which exclude parents, that's really the important point. Parents today are excluded from the education of their children. This has produced a dumbed-down generation. This, and you know, a lot of my kids in college are aware of the fact, they sense that they've been cheated, and they would like to be able to be wiser. Instead, they're offered spring break,
Okay.
and easy grades. We've got to think, as a country, we've got to think much more deeply, much more seriously about education. It's not about money. It's got nothing to do with money. It has to do with substance.
Right, great. There's plenty of money going into the education system.
Too
There's
much.
Just
Too much money.
okay, but it's just not sticking to basic subjects, or like you say, learning how to reason, learning how to think,
That's
and think on your own, responsibility
That's right.
for oneself. Basically, just getting back to all the classic ideals that the country was founded on. And I'd like to say, I think a lot of people don't realize that America, when after the Revolution, we had a chance to become like Europe if we wanted to.
That's right.
The point was, we said, we point over Europe, said, there's a lot of problems over here. How do we make a place that's not full of problems? And I think we had the most brilliant minds of the day answering the toughest questions, and I think they did a swell job.
They did a great job.
Okay. I think we're about out of time, and I certainly want to thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
And, you talk at Tea Party events, rallies, and things
Yes.
as well, right here, right?
Indeed, I do.
Okay. So people have a chance to hear you there. Okay. So thank you very much for watching TSPN today, and we'll see you again next time.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.